Welcome to Digitally Creative. I'm your host, Vincent Ferrari, and I can't believe I'm about to say this, but my guest this week is the one, the only, the legend, Bobby Duke. What's going on, man? How are you?
Hey, wow. That's quite the introduction. But I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing great, actually. It's been a whole day of, oh my God, this is really going to happen tonight. This is really going to happen tonight. Now here it is.
Well, don't be too excited. I usually don't say a whole lot of profound things, so we'll see what happens.
So for those of you that didn't hear my giddy excitement after Maker Camp last year, Bobby and I met at Maker Camp, which is another reason you should go to Maker Camp because you never know who you're going to bump into there. And we had a little conversation. I was like, hey, you want to come on the podcast? And scheduling things got in the way for both of us, but we finally ended up making it happen. And here we are just about on the cusp of another Maker Camp, which I'm wondering, are you going to be there again this year?
Probably. I'd really like to.
Mm-hmm.
It just kind of depends on schedule and stuff. When is it exactly?
I think it's the second weekend of October.
October. I don't think much is going on October.
Here we
Wait.
go.
Isn't it the annular eclipse is happening sometime in October? Hopefully it doesn't coincide
Ooh.
exactly
Ooh,
on that
everyone's
date.
hitting the Google frantically right now.
Yeah. Yeah, there's an annular eclipse this year and then a total eclipse in next year. I'm assuming you've heard of it. It's
the 2024 one is going to be in August of 24, right?
Yeah. Or it's August 8th, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm super
Sounds
pumped for
about
that
right.
one too.
Cool. You're like an eclipse lover, like get the glasses, get the telescope, all that stuff, or
I don't get the telescope, but definitely the glasses. Like the last one in 2017, I drove like 800 miles to go see.
oh wow.
I'm I'm not a hobbyist into astronomy. Like I don't have a telescope, but I love astronomy, the topic. So I love learning all about it. I think space is such a weird and crazy place. It has literal what we would consider sci-fi stuff, but that's actually real, like happening, in space. And it's just really fascinating to me. So yeah, I mean, also if you've seen an eclipse, then you'll know
Oh yeah.
how epic it is.
It was pretty amazing. The last one was the first solar eclipse that I ever like experienced. Well, at least that I know I experienced. I mean, who knows if there was one when I was younger or whatever, but that was the first one I ever experienced. And even looking at it through some cardboard glasses that are properly tinted, it was still an amazing experience. Like they actually gave us some time off at work so we could go outside and look at it. And they gave some of us glasses and some of us brought piles of them, and we're all standing outside like, whoa. You just realize, and it's not to get too philosophical, but man, the vastness of space and how insignificant we are in it really starts to come home when you start realizing what's going on in the universe.
Yeah, it just feels like it felt to me like a movie set. I mean, did you experience the totality, the complete black, darkness of the sky and everything?
We were pretty close to the band where that is. Like we were close enough where it got a little bit darker.
Okay.
It didn't get like crazy dark like it did in some places, but it was noticeable.
Okay, so I gotta say that if you haven't seen it in the path of totality, then it is literally night and day, no pun intended. But like the difference, because you will still see. I mean, it does get a little bit darker. It almost feels like you have sunglasses on or something.
Right.
And you look at the crescent shape, the crescent shapes all over the ground, from the sun going through the leaves or the trees or something like that. But full totality is it is totally different than an almost. There's either total or you didn't see the total. Right. And it sounds like you were just outside. You should have driven
outside. Like, I mean, like close enough. I mean, I think we would have had to go 6 or 7 hours west in New York to see it. And so it was enough. I could still see a tiny little bit of sun. Like, yes, I was definitely not where you were, right? But even from where I was, it was impressive. So I can only imagine, like,
in the
middle of it.
So essentially, you got to go and see this one. This one in 2024. Even if you have to drive 6 or 7 hours, it is worth it. It is one of those experiences where, like, I don't know. For me, it was like super emotional and very just powerful and weird all at the same time. Like, it was incredible. Like, the actual in the path, because the stars come out. It's so dark.
Right.
The stars come out in
I
the
guess
middle of the day.
I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, I guess that makes sense.
There's
You
a
basically it's the night
300,
sky.
360-degree sunset all along the horizon with just a glow of red, and then the night sky in the middle of the day, and then this jet black spot with the sun's corona blasting out, and it is totally different than
That's
like
wild.
being in the path versus not being in the path. It's totally different. So you got to make the trip.
Okay,
And
you've convinced me. You've convinced
anyone
me.
listening, yeah,
It was
I'm so pumped.
it was hard at the last one because like if you didn't make your reservations like ages in advance, like maybe you could have caught it on the side of a road somewhere, but that was the
Yeah,
best you were going to do because everywhere along the belt was completely booked up. And I loved watching the news reporters, like they were just jumping town to town to town, like, yep, we're in the belt. And you could see that there's thousands and thousands of people already here waiting. And they were getting there like early in the morning because it started like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, if I remember correctly, in New York.
yeah, it was midday sometime. I don't
Yeah.
remember exactly.
It was such a cool experience. Man, it sounds like a much cooler experience what you went through. So
you gotta go see the total. Also, we didn't even book a hotel in the path. I'm pretty sure we just got something, because that's what's cool about a eclipse. You don't have to be anywhere specific. I was in a
Right.
Walmart parking lot. We're literally going to be on the side of the road in a field for this next one, and I live in the path of totality. So
Oh,
we're going to
wow.
drive to the center of the path of totality, because if you're in the center, then you experience it longer. There's a longer period of the shadow going
Okay.
over. So we should expect somewhere close to 5 minutes of darkness. When the one I saw in Kentucky was, I think it was like 2.5 minutes, but still amazing. It's also going to be darker. So the longer the shadow, the wider the shadow, the deeper the darkness in the center of it, of the shadow. So it'll be darker and longer.
I love seeing you geeking out about this because you're well known as an artist, a maker, a super creative guy, a YouTube personality, and you're geeking out over an eclipse, and that just makes me so happy. Like I love when you find that thing that ignites people, and you're definitely like this has really got you, and I'm very excited by this.
Yeah, I mean, it's been 2017 since I saw my last one, and I'm still
Mhm.
this excited. I've been getting more excited. I've been waiting for 2024, the day after 2017. The day
Mhm.
after that eclipse. And yeah, I love astronomy, just natural wonders and beauty. Like I recently went to California. We had a trip to Japan that kind of uh, got it got messed up. The trip, because long story short, my adult daughters didn't get their passports in time,
Oh
so
man.
we had to kind of make different plans, which was going to California. And we went to Yosemite, and we went to the not the redwoods, but the Sequoia National Park, and
Wow.
saw the giant sequoias like General Sherman and the other massive trees. That was almost on par as an eclipse for me. Like just the trees sitting there. And I felt horrible because some people came up that recognized me. I
Oh
just
boy.
walked up to the base of General
Mhm.
Sherman, and I'm like, you know, could not just wrap my mind around how amazing it was. And
Mhm.
I had some viewers, fans, whatever, come up, and I was like, I felt like kind of a jerk because I was so distracted by this tree. And I'm like, no, don't look at me. Look at the tree. There's a freaking huge tree there. So it was an interesting, it was fun, but
There's a
uh,
legendarily large tree behind
yeah,
me.
like,
Stop looking
dude,
at the YouTuber.
yeah. Look at the dadgum freakishly huge, cartoonishly big tree in front of you. Yeah, no, but they were super cool, and but I just thought it was an interesting experience, where I was like literally like, ah, ah, ah,
Did you
But
feel a little bit of remorse for having cut up so much wood in your life after seeing that tree? Did you feel like it was gonna make up for all the little wood that you'd cut up?
no, most of the wood, and it was funny is I say wood
Uh-huh.
sometimes around my family, and they're
Mhm.
very quick to correct me if I get it wrong. But most of the time, the wood that I get my hands on
Mhm.
is either scrap or cut off or a lot. I have some friends that are in the arborist industry, the tree trimming industry, and they will remove a dead tree or whatever, and I'll go and get chunks of it from them.
Mhm.
Uh, so no, I don't feel bad because I typically don't. I do buy some wood, and I have in some of my videos, but a lot of it is either free or, you know,
Gotcha. Like reclaimed
gotten.
urban lumber, that kind of stuff, chopped
Yeah.
trees and stuff like that.
Uh, it is what's crazy to me is so those trees, the sequoias and even the redwoods, a lot of them, there's only, I think the Redwood National Forest, there's only 4% left. So
Wow.
96% has been cut down through forestry from like the 1920s and 30s and stuff like that, primarily to make, and this is all stuff that I've learned while I was there at the parks, but primarily to make fence posts and roof shingles.
Oh,
can you
jeez.
can you believe it?
That just feels
It's just
horrible.
crazy. Just crazy to imagine if you've been there to think that someone would, rationalize, justify cutting down a tree like that for any reason, but especially that.
It's like when you find
Uh,
out they're strip mining the tops off mountains to get to like lithium and cobalt and stuff, and it's like, oh,
yeah,
for a battery that's going to last 3 years that you're going to throw away anyway.
yeah. There's
That's
a lot of.
lovely.
I also find it ironic, like a lot of the grocery stores will either charge you for bags or there's like a bag they won't give you plastic bags.
And you
They'll
can't
give
get
you
them in New Jersey at all anymore. They
uh,
don't. There's no
same in
such thing.
California, but in the
Yeah.
store, everything is
Everything's in
packaged in
plastic.
plastic. So it's like, wait a second, what is the purpose of? Is it like what's happening here?
Yeah, it's like
There's a lot of
a lot of the stores. A lot of the stores, they'll give you a paper to go box for your food. But if they're prepackaged at the store, it's shrink wrapped. It's like,
yeah,
wait a minute, hold on. If it was plastic, then you would just have the plastic wrap. Like, what are you doing?
yeah. Oh, I could go
It's
on
amazing.
about all the weird hypocrisies in the world and the weird just
I
stuff
always
happening.
I always laugh at Starbucks is one of my favorite like what the hell targets because Starbucks will tell you that the napkins that you get at Starbucks are printed on 100% recycled paper, but then they print on them with green ink, which means they're spinning up two machines. They have one machine to make the napkin, then they have another one to print on them, and it's
To
like,
tell you
well,
that it's
maybe you don't
not
have to
bad.
print your name on the damn napkin. We can assume that if we're at Starbucks, that's a Starbucks napkin. It's okay. You don't have to have branded napkins.
Yeah, yeah, all kinds of stuff.
So, one of the things that I've always been curious about, and one of the reasons I was so looking forward to talking to you is I feel like we know a lot about where you are now in your artistic journey. Probably not every detail because you're a very private person, and I think that's really awesome. I like that about you. But I've always been curious about your origin story because I don't feel like I know it. I don't feel like I've ever heard it. I don't feel like you've ever really told it. Like, how did you get started with making, and how did you get so skilled at so many different disciplines? Because I've seen you do everything from woodworking to sculpting to, I feel like there's almost nothing you can't do. And I'm not just fanboying here, but based on your catalog of videos, you've done a lot of different things and you do them all really well. So what's your background? How did you get started and how did you get the ball rolling on what's been a pretty amazing career?
Well, thank you. Uh, I don't. It's funny because you call me a maker, and I tell people I'm an artist, but I know
Mm-hmm.
maker and art can kind of overlap, or definitely do. Um, but as far as like I almost categorize them differently in my head though when it comes to me because my art journey and the making side of it because there's a lot of similar skills involved in both
Mm-hmm.
are two kind of separate things. So art started from as long as I can remember. So I've always been interested in three-dimensional art ever since I was a little kid. Started by whittling little daggers around a campfire for my friends, like when camping and stuff, and I ended up being able to do it pretty well. And my friends were all like super psyched. I'd make a knife or whatever and hand it to one of the boys, and they'd run around. It was just like I got that sort of thrill that people liked what I was making. And so that encouraged me to keep up with it. But then my parents kind of saw that I had a knack for it, and enrolled me in like an art class with a lady who is still an artist. Her name is Judy Sager. She does sculpting and painting, but that's where I got kind of the groundwork laid for technique, or the way to look at things. Shading. I started typically with drawing, but then kind of transitioned into sculpting. So ever since I was a little kid, as far as purely art, but as far as like working with tools and woodworking and making and more of that side of it, started when I was younger as well. My first job was, well, besides like before I was legally allowed to work, but my first job, I think at 16, was working at a cabinet shop that did high end, like they were known for like high end, anything goes, custom bespoke cabinets.
Oh, wow.
So I learned a lot about how to work with wood, how to use table saws, band saws, planers, joiners, routers, belt sanders, all the tools and stuff, and how to use them safely. And then just the way wood works and how to work it. So I also fell in love with wood, in that time, just how beautiful it was, and just the properties of it, and how there were so many different species and stuff. So that got my interest in that. But I also did remodeling. I did faux painting, tile. I even did tree trimming for a while. I did a tattoo. It was a tattoo artist briefly, truck driver and stuff. So like little things from basically every job other than maybe truck driving. I just sort of picked up different skills that I applied to art. And as far as working, I've been talking for a long time. You want to say something?
No, I'm enjoying it. My
Okay.
goal is to do a 1 hour and 20-minute podcast and say 5 minutes worth of things. So by all
Okay.
means.
Okay, cool. As far as like, there has been a developmental journey through art and working with my hands and stuff, but I don't really practice. It's one of those things that I've always just kind of had a knack for, that I've been able to just sort of do. That's where the argument of talent and hard work comes up.
Right.
That there's this debate on, if you say, wow, they're talented, that's somehow insulting and demeaning the amount of, or belittling the work that they put into it. I haven't really worked at it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I've learned things, as I've grown, but I mean, I've always just been able to kind of do it to some level. And so, yes, the abilities that I've developed, and I did develop. That's the thing, is like, it's a weird thing, because I totally understand, and I'm acknowledging the work that I have put into it.
Sure.
But I don't know, like, I'm able to work with stuff that I've never worked with before, ever, for the first time. And I put a lot of thought in, basically, I think it's not even an ability. It's more a way to an understanding of how things work, and properties, and cause and effect. And I don't know if I'm making any sense, but like, I think my ability to plan out sequence of events and how to accomplish my end goal, and then breaking it down into little bitty steps, which any of them by themselves are simple, when all added together create the finished piece. I think I'm able to do that more efficiently than some people.
Sure.
Which I don't know. It's a weird thing when it comes to like talent and hard work. And yes, I've worked hard, but I also have always just kind of been able to do it.
There's kind of like this inherent knack for figuring things out on the
Right.
fly, and
Because
you're also
my
really
job is
good.
problem solving,
Yeah,
essentially.
your process, like when you did a couple in a row of like carving river rocks. And I was fascinated by that because that always felt like an unachievable process for just the average person. Like, how do people carve these rocks? And you just kind of, your diamond Dremel bits and your diamond burrs, and you basically go into your shop and like, here, look, this is how easy it is. We're going to do this because this is what happens. We're going to do this. We're going to keep it wet. And it's like, and you can buy the burrs really cheap on Amazon. You can buy a whole set of them. You have every shape you need. And it's like, wow, you just made something I thought was like super scary and intimidating, very approachable. And then
Right.
watching you do it so well also makes me want to try it because it's like, oh, maybe I can achieve that too. Maybe I could get there.
Right. And I think that is more an ability not to be able to do something, but just to understand the process.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I was able to wrap my head around the process. Like, that's a great example where you're like, it's just something you never thought you'd attempt because it's
Sure.
some sort of big skill you need, or lots of tools,
Lots of
or some
tools.
sort of
Yeah, sure.
school you need to go to, rock carving school, you know. And I just saw it and was like, well, you know, they sell these consumer grade burrs that are diamond, and they, diamond cuts rock, and I just put the pieces together.
I
Uh,
love I love watching the way there's like you go through short phases with your videos, and it's always interesting. Like you went through a phase where you were carving a lot of rocks. You went through a phase where you're doing a lot of polymer clay sculpting and stuff like that. You went through a phase where you're making little weapons and tools out of bolts and stuff. And it's like each one gets more refined. Do you do them in a series like that because you're like, okay, that was the first one, I really want to nail the second one, and like you want to, or is it just I just want to make that? Like, is there a reason you tend to batch things together like that, or is it just the way your mind works?
um, I think it's more. I can't stick with one thing for too long, or I'll get sort of burned out or bored on it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I could never be the guy who just does the thing,
Mm-hmm.
the one thing. I have to constantly entertain myself with what I'm making. And there, part of it is if a video does really well and it's something I enjoy making anyways, might as well do a couple of them,
Sure.
kind of ride the wave of the people that are interested in that topic. Um, but I'm typically interested in it for a couple of videos worth. But that's why I like going back to. I'm going to be doing a future video as another rock carving video, but it's with it's a different twist,
Okay.
and it has other elements like sculpture and resin as well. So there's ways that I like take older ideas and then try to turn them into new things that make me interested in it again. Um, yeah, it's mainly just there's a lot of factors, my interest in it, and also audience response.
I
Those
was
two factor in.
I was
But
actually
yeah,
going to ask you that because I think part of the reason, and I'm just, looking at your channel, having watched it for as long as I have, you have about 4.5 million subscribers at this point. And I wonder if you've probably cracked the code because where everyone is being told, niche down, stay in a specific lane, you're just like, no, I make art. That's my lane, art. Like it's like
yeah,
you never know what you're going to get. It's a new Bobby Duke video. It's not a new Bobby Duke makes a cutting board video. It's
right. Well, yeah, I mean, art is such a broad category, which is why I have arts. It's
Mhm.
I didn't want to actually originally my original channel was called Duke Wood Carving, and then I was very quickly I was like, I like more than just wood carving, so I don't want to
Mhm.
pigeonhole myself into one specific, like make that too narrow. So I broadened it to just arts, so it would allow me to, hey, this is a wood carving channel, and you're sculpting,
Yes.
or
Yes, I am.
polymer clay or whatever, So yeah, well, I'm glad because I mean I love art and I love making it, and that's why I started basically the channel in the first place, was just kind of document what I was doing, and then it turned into something way bigger down the
It
road. But
when you got because you've worked with some big other YouTubers, which is wild. And I think the most surprising one to me, and I remember I was sitting on my couch with my ex-wife was sitting next to me. We were watching because I was not allowed to watch your videos without her. I had to watch them. Her and I had to watch your videos together because she adores you also. And we
Cool.
used to sit there and watch your videos, and we also watched 1000's videos. And when he was doing the world's largest art collab, the first one, and we were getting to the end, and I was following it along, and I was literally subscribing to every single person who worked on it.
Oh,
And he
cool.
gets it back, and he's like, well, we need an epic frame for this. And he's like, I know just the person, and it was you. And I swear we both just went, ah! It was like this great big moment, like, holy crap, Bobby Duke is perfect to do this. And then you absolutely blew minds with the crystals that you put on the frame. Like, you took this beautiful 2-dimensional painting that everyone had done some wild stuff on, and you added dimensionality to it, essentially, because it was a painting, and now it has these amazing crystals, and they light, and they're beautiful, and it didn't take away from the art at all. It just looked like it belonged there. How did it feel to get that like how did it feel when Peter asked you to collaborate? And did you feel any pressure having to kind of put that together on something that was so amazing to begin with?
Well, of course, I was excited. Peter reached out. I actually didn't know if I was going to be able to. I think in the beginning, and it was one of those things where, yeah, he asked me. I said I think so, kind of schedule dependent, and then it was like, yes, I can do it. But then that's when the weight of it, like, oh crap, I actually have to make this thing.
What did I
Um,
just say yes to?
yeah, but no, I was excited and honored, to be a part of such a big collaboration.
Hmm.
Multiple countries and lots. I forget 7 artists or something like that. Uh, but the hardest part was, and I'm glad you said it didn't overpower the painting, was
Hmm.
to do something unique and not just a lame old frame, because that's not interesting to me, but also no one would care if I'm
in your
just
head
like
in your head you must have known that he wasn't asking you to make a frame, right? Like, you had to know that he wasn't going, oh no, I need Bobby Duke to make me like a frame. No, he wants Bobby Duke to make a Bobby Duke frame.
right. No, he did. He was like, basically, you do whatever you want and
Hmm.
just make some epic frame. So I knew that it was never going to be just a generic frame. But yeah, that was the hard part, was trying to make something crazy enough that but I'm glad it accomplished what you just said, which was
Absolutely.
didn't take away, but added to it. It felt like a part of the original idea or concept and piece. I tried to match sort of the color scheme, but also add the
That was the
wood
most impressive part, that
and the
you matched the color scheme. Like, it was because that's what made it look integrated into the artwork instead of something that was slapped on at the end. Like, that was the clincher,
right.
that it
And there
was
was no pigment at all added to that. If you remember, I used dichroic plastic film.
like that. Yeah,
And
the crunchy plastic film that
yeah,
you. Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
like a cellophane.
Mm-hmm.
That is there, and that's not a pigment. That's just like a surface. If I remember correctly, it's a molecular surface texture that refracts the light a
Mm-hmm.
specific way. And so there's no pigment in any of the colors. It's all just the way the light's reflecting on the dichroic plastic inside the thing. That I thought was kind of a cool, that I was able to get those colors in there without. There's no pig. It's clear resin. The resin
Yeah,
is
and
clear.
it's not opaque because you did it that way, and that's what's amazing about it. Like, it's not these blocks of like pigmented resin, which I'm sure would look fine, but it wouldn't look right, you know.
Right. But yeah, so I was excited and I'm happy with it, the way it turned out. I don't know. I was thinking, man, this thing's pretty crazy. Hopefully, it's not gonna take away or distract or whatever. But no, I think it in the end worked. It was pretty nuts, though. The weird. I also like asymmetry. I like symmetrical, but on that, I
Mhm.
really wanted the asymmetry to it.
Yeah,
I think it.
you definitely. I mean, the fact that it took 2 videos, by the way, was also like, because you finished the first one, I'm like, okay, where are we going? Where are we go? We're done? no, 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 we're not. We can't be done. And then there was the second video shortly after, and it's like, oh man, this is just so good. Like it was, and then everybody, I feel like if you've worked with resin, you now start, and this is why it pays to watch an artist like you do their thing, because I watch that and I go, oh, using that film to color resin instead of making solid blocks of color. That's an idea. Like file that one in the back of your head. And now I see people doing it all the time, but until you did it, I had never seen anyone do it. So,
Well, I wasn't the first person. I can't remember where I saw someone doing that, but it was like probably an Instagram reel or something, and I was like, that's an interesting take.
mhm.
So I wasn't the very first person.
Ah,
Um, but yeah, it is kind of interesting because
it was unique
it
at the time, even if it wasn't.
it changes color too depending on what
Mhm.
angle you look at it. Like one crystal will have a predominantly sort of greenish hue, then you turn it slightly, and then the colors, because of the dichroic nature of the plastic, it then will reflect more purples, like a contrasty purple, like totally different shades will come through. And some of them, honestly, the ones that I really like are the ones that kind of do a spectrum of colors.
Yes.
Uh,
The one you
but
managed to
those,
catch that in the thumbnail really good, which is kind of cool. The thumbnail for the second video is fantastic.
yeah, filming or taking a picture of and recording it is pretty hard to get to where it looks like it actually looks in real life,
Mhm.
um but yeah, thanks. It worked hard in trying to get a good picture of it.
And I love that I love that you do this two-part epic, like, art project, that whole frame, and then the next video is you making a wacky anime weapon and going to a shooting range with it. It's like, this is why, like, the madness of you is, like, so addictive, because it's like, yeah, he's doing a cosplay in a gun range. Okay, cool. Yeah, let's go do that now.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a very much just like me.
Mhm.
I'm very bouncing around on subjects. Like this month, I'm really into entomology. I'm collecting trying to collect a full set of each species of insect that lives around my house, and I'm creating
Wow.
like shadow boxes. You know
Oh,
how
that's
you pin insects, then they dry, and then you can put them in a shadow box. And I'm going to have the scientific name with the common name underneath each one. But then I was into horology a few months before that. That's the study of like the working on mechanical clocks or watches.
Mhm.
I don't think it may also apply to digital, but like pocket watches, super into pocket watches for a while. So it's kind of a it's just the way I am, I'm
Mhm.
super flighty when it comes to my interests, which is kind of can't have its drawbacks because I end up with a lot of stuff and junk
Mhm.
pertaining to each one of my hobbies. Also, RC is a hobby, RC planes and cars, um, uh, weather, bonsai trees, astronomy. Uh, there's a long
What a
list.
range of stuff.
that, but like I said, it can be kind of almost stressful in a way because I'm constantly having to like shift focus and not having to, but it's like it does it automatically. My brain
Mhm.
will shift focus to a new topic that I'll fixate on for several months and then move on to something else. A lot of times I will come back to an older topic, and I thankfully I'll have all the stuff for it ready, because I've
Right.
saved it. But like right now, all my watch repair stuff is just kind of sitting, waiting for me to come back to it.
Mhm.
Uh, right now, I'm pinning bugs, but like you said, that it I'm glad it makes it interesting, but it's in a way it can be kind of a drawback. I wish I could just sometimes focus,
Yeah.
and stay focused on something.
I totally understand it though, because like I didn't realize how much I did that until I moved into this apartment. And in my last house was where my shop and my craft room were, and I realized what I had accumulated over the prior 5 or 6 years. And I realized how many times my interests took a right or a left turn. And it's like, "Oh, you have polymer clay and soap making stuff and woodworking tools and like diamond burrs and a whole bunch of rocks. And it's like
Yeah.
you know, you start to realize like, wow, I'm not. And I know that it's a bad thing to just collect tools and supplies and not actually do the thing. But I've gone back to a lot of those things over the years
Yeah.
and gone, oh, I think I'm ready to try that now. I'm ready to do that now. I'm ready to really dive into that now. And I
Yeah.
totally understand it. It's funny, you sound a lot like, and I'm not trying to put myself on your level, don't get me wrong, but I
No.
understand where you're coming from because I kind of work the same way. It's like, oh, I want to get into that. Okay, what do I need to get into that? Get that, get that, get that, get that, get that, get the stuff put aside. Okay, I'll get to that now.
Yeah.
I'll get to it. And then a couple months down the line, I'll go, I bought all that stuff. Maybe I should give it a go.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I can rationalize divulging, or not divulging, but buying stuff, tools, whatever materials for a
Mm-hmm.
specific hobby, because I eventually will full circle back around to it,
Mm-hmm.
and my interest will be piqued. Like every spring, my interest in bonsai is rejuvenated because everything comes out of dormancy, and then I can work on them, and I get really into them and stuff. I have a big collection in the backyard that I've been working on, and but yeah, it's like every year, winter comes around, I basically lose interest because there's nothing really to do on them. But then they're there again in the
And then they're
spring.
there. It's like, oh, look
But
at
like the
you.
watch stuff, I know eventually I'll come back to fixing and working on watches.
Mm-hmm.
So
I bought
um,
a whole bunch of better electronics repair stuff than what I had. And I repaired a whole bunch. Like I repaired like a Simon, from the 80s, the game with the four buttons. I repaired
yeah,
two of those. I repaired a Coleco football. I repaired like a Coleco tabletop game, and I just was repairing them just because it was fun to do. Like buying them super cheap on eBay and
yeah,
fixing them, making them work again. I haven't done that in a while, but I know that if I were to just see one come across my transom on eBay now, it's like, oh, I have everything I need. I can just go work. I can buy it and work on it. I don't need to acquire more tools. I don't need to
yeah,
acquire more
yeah.
things to make that
That
happen.
hobby you just kind of put it on standby until
Hmm.
the interest gets peaked again. Have you seen the channel Toy Polloi?
I love Toy Polloi. Dave
Okay,
is
yeah, yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
Absolutely.
I love watching him repair retro toys, and it's just interesting, uh, the way his techniques and getting it back to
I
a
love how
working
much he
condition.
uses. It's really funny because at the beginning of some of the videos, he has a disclaimer that says, warning, parental warning, Lego destruction ahead. And it's like, oh, he's going to fix something with Lego. And
I
it's
know,
amazing how much he fixes with Lego parts. It's
I
incredible.
know. He just like snaps stuff together or whatever, or he'll recreate a joint or something inside internally. Use
Hmm.
Lego.
I showed a
Yeah,
friend of mine, he did a video on how to restring the legs on a GI Joe. And because the rubber bands, over time those rubber bands, they just start to disintegrate.
yeah,
And I sent, my friend had said, he had a whole like big Ziploc bag full of his GI Joes from when he was a kid, and he's like, but they're all, and he would hold them up and like they're all in multiple pieces. I'm like, I got the guy for you. And I sent him the
yeah.
toy Poloy video. I'm here, watch this. And he fixed all of them. Like he sat there over the course of a weekend just fixing all his
Oh,
GI
cool.
Joes from when he was a kid. And I was like, see, this is why these videos are worth watching. Like, even if
Yeah,
I'm not good, I don't have any of my GI Joes, but like, look how much joy it brought him to fix all of them.
yeah. And I love watching videos that I have nothing to do with. Like I'm not into a
Interesting.
specific field or whatever. I watch, well, like I'm not a scientist, but I love watching science videos,
Hmm.
um, or like ClickSpring. He's another channel, or old
Oh
Tony.
my
This
God,
old
his
Tony.
machines are
Yeah, I
so
love.
incredible.
Yeah, this old Tony is another great one.
Hmm.
Where these guys are machinists and working on with precision lathing and metal and things, and I don't own any of those tools or machines, and I mean, it's maybe one day, who knows, but I love watching precision stuff too. Like people get
Yeah.
really geeked out and working on tedious things, because it's funny because like if anywhere one were to guess, do I like working on tedious, like, things that take hours and hours and hours of focus, you
I would
probably
say
would
no.
never guess.
Yeah.
But it's one of my favorite things to do is to sit for hours getting all crazy anal about some tiny details. Uh, I don't know, because it's one of the ways that I can truly focus and
Hmm.
truly quiet all the everything else in my head, and I'm not thinking about anything other than that moment and
Hmm.
that tiny detail that thing I'm trying to accomplish. Um, and that's why, I mean, it's funny because I think that that's why, and I don't know if you wanted to even go here, but I've had, addiction issues in my past. Is uh, substances are a way to just quiet everything,
Yeah. Yeah.
just turn down the volume on the chaos in your head.
You
And so
you
go ahead. Sorry.
you've talked about, and one of the things I admire so much about you is you've talked about your mental health quite a few times. I think you mentioned it once, but not like in any great detail about the addiction stuff. I
Yeah.
heard it. I remember hearing you talk about it once, but not in like great detail. And it's. I'm always impressed by how open you are about it. Like I think BetterHelp was one of your sponsors for a while, but it wasn't like an ad read when you were talking about it. Like I could tell like it meant something to you and it was important to you, and it's really interesting to see people. I'm very open about my own mental health also. I've been over the years. It's one of the things that I stopped feeling ashamed about. I've dealt with depression, dealt with anxiety, went to therapy for a while to kind of get myself sorted out a little bit, and it definitely was worth doing.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like it's something I need. After I started dealing with it, it felt less like something I needed to be ashamed of, and I've always been impressed by how open you are about how the stuff you've dealt with over the years.
Well, yeah. I mean, my philosophy is I really don't have a whole lot of sacred uh, things about me. Like, there's not a whole lot of things that I consider sacred information that
Mhm.
needs to be hidden or not talked about, especially when it's something like your brain. Your brain is like the most complicated organ you have.
Mhm.
People get problems with their organs all the time. A
Sure.
brain is just another organ that can have problems. And now I don't know how many of my issues are self inflicted due to the drug use or alcohol use over the years. By the way, I'm like, I still struggle. Like, I'll occasionally drink or mess up or whatever. I mean, no hard drugs.
Right,
But
right.
yeah, back in the day, it got really bad. Like really bad. Went to rehab, overdosed, and been through the whole
Wow.
thing. At one point, I was panhandling for money, to get drugs. Um, but uh, the thing that really kind of changed my trajectory was meeting Nicole, my wife. Um, it was like, I don't know. I had this weird, like, sort of disregard for my own life or
Mhm.
anything. I also had a very weird upbringing, very sheltered, super controlling, um, homeschool, home church, sheltered from everything from the outside world and everything. That's kind of why I went crazy and rebelled against
Yeah, you kind of
everything.
that's usually what ends up happening. You kind
Yeah.
of just completely veer off in the other direction just
Oh
to get
yeah.
away
I
from it.
took
Yeah.
a nosedive into self-destructive behavior as soon as I left
Wow.
at 17, uh, and on very bad terms. And immediately was just like anything I can get my hands on. Like, it didn't matter what. I mean, in literally anything. I've done, the worst drugs you can imagine. Uh, and I don't know. A lot of people say, all the things you do along your life are what help shape you, and that therefore they're glad that they happened. But I'm not, because I do feel like I have some residual problems because here's the thing is there's no way to know for sure,
Mhm.
because I can't go back and undo that and then see how I'd be. But like, you know I've had horrible anxiety and depression and uh like like totally disruptive, like my anxiety, probably the worst thing, not a social anxiety, but like an anxiety typically triggered by something that happens in my
Mhm.
body, like my heart will flutter, or I'll feel a weird pain, or something like that, and I think I'm dying, kind of a thing.
Oh, wow.
And that's gotten a lot better. But I wonder how bad it would have been if I hadn't done drugs as extreme, and as long as I did. It wasn't for a horribly long period of time, but
It was
I know
long
stuff like
enough.
that. Yeah, it was long enough that I know I did damage to myself. Yeah, the anxiety was definitely one of the hardest parts of my life that I've been through. Was that what's the word I? It was debilitating.
Mm-hmm.
Where I was having multiple full-on panic attacks a day, followed by just super high levels of generalized anxiety every day, all day, and
Wow.
it 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 made me cynical. And a lot of people don't think that. I mean, they probably assume that I'm like just a happy guy and stuff all the time, but like, I'm sure the people that watch can see the darkness that's sometimes there that comes out.
It
You know,
peeks out every once in a while
yeah.
in
Well,
little bursts.
I also like weird and kind of the scary genre and stuff a lot
Mm-hmm.
too. But uh, it I used to be like, if you ask Nicole, I used to be the happiest person, always looking on the bright side, saw the good in everything. And going through that changed me, not in a good way. And so that's what I'm saying is I don't know for a fact, but I'm guessing it didn't help. The drug use didn't help the
Right.
anxiety later on in my life, which then actually did change me in much more negative ways. Like I'm working on it. That's the thing is I am going to therapy still. I don't have the panic attacks like I used to. It's one of those things where you can kind of grow out of it, and I have to
Mm-hmm.
a large extent. But I don't even know where I'm going with this. I'm going kind of rabbit trail, but it's just one of those things that I know I'm bouncing around. So, like, back to mental health, I never understood the stigma that some people have, or the apprehension, or the holding back of talking about something like that. So it never even really occurred to me. I was
Mm-hmm.
also very sheltered, so I wasn't. That's the thing about me. Like, I had to learn what society was like. I had to learn what
Yeah.
people outside of my very close bubble of homeschool kids was like. I wasn't exposed to it, so I didn't have that influence to teach me that I should be ashamed about something like that,
Mm.
or that there were certain societal expectations about behavior, that's gotten me into trouble. I don't think about what other people are thinking about me a lot of times in public, just because I just didn't have that constant reminder growing up. I was so sheltered that it just didn't infiltrate my mind when I was younger. So part of that is it's not like me. Oh well, I'm just so open and great. It's partly because of nurture and how I was brought up. I think um, to an extent as well.
You've been open to the point, like when I came up to you at Maker Camp, I was like, oh boy, okay, because I know I kind of understand your the your way of thinking, and you were kind of like over by the pagoda over there, and you were just like taking a drink, and that's why I kind of approached you like a scary lion. I'm like, hey man, I don't want to bother you. I don't want to bother you, but if you're taking a drink, like it's cool. I'll come back, but I just wanted to say hi and talk to you for a bit. And you're like, come on over, and I'm like, okay, because I know what like the anxiety, especially in a place like that where you're probably getting bombarded every 20 seconds from somebody who catches you. Because I mean, even I was online to get my picture taken with Mark Adams, and I saw you out the corner of my eye, and I was talking to Johnny Lambert. I was like, "Can you give me 1 second? I just have to go do this. Like, I have to go say." He's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, go ahead."
Yeah, Johnny Lambert. I know him.
And I was like, and I came up when I came over to you, and you were so nice and so kind, and you gave me so much of your time. And I was so in the back of my mind, like, don't take too much of his time. Let the man breathe. He's probably had a whole bunch of people up in his face all day long. Just let the man breathe. Let the man breathe. That's all I kept saying was, let the man breathe. That's why I just like threw the idea of the podcast out. I'm like, hey, I'm bringing the podcast back. I'd love to have you on it sometime if that would work for you. And that was, I didn't want to like take too much of your time, but I think one of the reasons I was able to, like, I don't usually regulate that well. I'm not gonna lie. Like if I'm chatting with you, we could chat for an hour in a spot like that. But I think one of the reasons is because you've been so open about who you are and what your issues over the past have been. It's like, oh, I know he needs a breather. Like, he's got to need a breather after a day like this, because I needed a breather and I'm not anywhere near at the level you're at.
Yeah, well, I mean, thank you. And yeah, I love talking to people and meeting people. Yeah, that's the thing, is I don't get social anxiety. Like I don't have a problem talking to people or about even heavy topics or anything like that. Sometimes it just gets like, it doesn't happen very often, but like sometimes at events, yeah, I'll just get tired
Oh,
physically.
I can imagine. I can
My
imagine.
voice gets shot, or the I will say the hardest part, like say Maker Central, for example, meeting people is amazing, and I don't want to, like, it's always a good experience. But when you think about it, each person that comes to talk to I feel like I owe it to them to not only give my undivided attention, but to really listen to what they're saying. And
Right.
over hours of listening and also having to process and give feedback, and it be legit and real, and not just yeah, thanks a lot, haha, whatever, or yeah, whatever, the
Sure.
superficial stuff. Because a lot of people have really deep stories, or stuff that they want to tell me. It gets like, not emotionally tiring. It's like more like a just,
It's a
my
lot.
brain just like turns to mush,
Yeah,
after
yeah,
a
totally.
bunch of hours of having to process intake and then give them a legit piece of yourself,
Plus,
while
there's
you're,
the whole parasocial relationship where, you don't know who they are at all, but they know
yeah,
you.
it
And
is
that's
interesting.
that was the first, because I'm just going to tell you now, like I said, I'm not at your level. I'm not trying to say like I empathize
No,
because I'm Bobby Doo, but
there's no
it happened.
levels here.
It
We're all the
happened to
same.
me. It happened to me. People came up to me and they recognized me and they're like, "Oh, I love the podcast. I'm sorry it's over. It was over at the time. Obviously now it's back, but I hope you bring it back. And I just wanted to let you know I listen to it every Wednesday and I look forward to it." And I'm like, "I'm sorry, I don't know who you are." I said, and I actually wore a, I don't know if you remember, but I don't expect you to, but I wore a bright yellow shirt with my logo on the back. And I actually posted on my Instagram stories. I said, if you see me, come up to me because I don't know who any of you are. It's like,
Right.
and some people came up to me and said hi. And I was like, oh my God. Like, I can only imagine, like, at scale, what that must be like to have so many people who know you, but you don't know them. And it's like, wow, that's got to be like a major freak out moment. It's got to be.
Yeah. It's, I mean, I'm kind of, I mean, my, like, say, I'm used to it now. People don't
No,
come
but
up
I
to me
mean,
all the time in
yeah,
public,
you've been in that
but I'm more
position for a
used to it.
while. Right.
Um, yeah, it is interesting. But I feel honored, like, and I have to take that in consideration as well when talking to people that I don't specifically know. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It is weird. I mean, I thought about it a few times. The sort of, like you said, parasocial. What exactly is the meaning of that? I
It's a
know I've heard it in context.
it's basically a one-sided relationship where there's a social the you develop kind of a social affinity for somebody that you've never actually met. So like
Oh,
I
yeah,
feel like I know a lot about you and I know you don't know a lot about me because,
right.
it's just the way it is. You're out there more. And but I feel like if I had a conversation with you, I could talk about your life, but you really couldn't talk much about mine. I mean, maybe after
Right.
today you
Okay.
could, who
Yeah.
knows?
So yeah. So I guess I understood
Yeah.
the meaning of the word correctly. Yeah. I mean, I don't even know really what to say about it, other than it is an interesting experience. To have
It
someone
is.
walk up to you who has an emotional connection that they feel that they have to you.
Mhm.
Um, and so, like, one thing that I'm always just like, it's not bad weird, but it is still weird. It's a good
It's
weird.
weird. It is weird,
But
yeah.
when someone comes up and they tell me, like, uh, I didn't commit suicide because of one of your videos, or
Jeez.
like, you helped me get through my brother, get through the hard times when a loved one died, or something like that. It's just like, that's when it becomes like super heavy, and like, wow, it's just, you never realize all the things that the things that you may just think are just a throwaway joke, or just, I'm just trying to make people laugh, that can actually do way more than you expected. And I it's a sense of responsibility that I feel, and like feel very honored, to be able to be in that position to help people in any way I can. But yeah, it's an interesting experience.
Aside from being an artist at heart and having a deep love of making, creating, and being a creative person, is that one of the things that keeps you going? Like, is it equal parts of I love to create stuff and people are like loving my stuff, like, and I mean something to them? Like, how much of it is like, is it mostly I want to create and I'm making videos about it, or does some of these people really love my stuff and it matters to them and I really don't want to let them down? Like, how much of that is a balance that you do?
I mean, it's kind of all of the above, because even if YouTube didn't exist, I would still be making art.
Hmm.
I may not be recording it and doing and the videos and everything, but of course, the art is it's interesting because the way I see it is my video is the thing people are consuming. The art is a prop, or it is a goal. It's a journey. The art is the end result of the journey,
Right.
but the video, and I'm a character in the video. Um, so the video and art are two separate things to me. That now the video making process is an art form as well. It's a
Hmm.
total creative outlet. Up until very recently, I mean, I've had a couple of videos where I've had some help with editing wise, but almost all the video editing has been done by me. That's one of the things I'm working on, is trying to get help. It's why I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself, because I was going to start talking about why I haven't posted many videos. Uh, but So your original question was how much of it drives me, the fact that people really enjoy watching me making it, versus how much am I doing it basically for myself.
Hmm.
And um, it is kind of about, like, I don't know, like, I mean, there's a lot of factors. So it provides for my family and it's my job.
Hmm.
So I need to keep putting videos out for that reason. That's one of them, monetary
Right.
reasons. And the second is I love that it brings joy to people and hopefully inspires them to maybe give art a try if they're not already an artist. And if they are an artist, maybe they can learn something, or, get inspired to try some other avenue or area of art they haven't tried. Because I know for me, it's such a big, deep thing that I need. Like, I have this overwhelming urge to do it. It's almost like
Hmm.
an addiction in a way, in another kind of way. But then there's the videos, that, because I love making people laugh and happy and entertained. So I don't know. It's kind of hard way to answer. They're all their own unique thing, and it's hard for me to, like, because, like, I do it for me as well, but I do it for other people, but I do it also to pay the bills, so it's got
Hmm.
a lot of facets to why. I don't know, all of the above. I know that's not a great answer, but
That's a great answer.
like, but the other answer is I would still be doing it. I may not be making the videos, but I'd still be
You'd be
creating.
still
But here's
making the art.
the other question is, I have attempted as many things, or branched out into different mediums, or tried to get as creative if I that I've become, or in the videos, if I didn't have an audience? That's a question. I think the answer would be I wouldn't have made as much art, and I wouldn't have experimented and pushed myself as much.
Hmm.
So in a way, I think that like a feedback loop where the video and the response and everything helps to keep me wanting to push myself, not just to make it interesting, but to keep it interesting for the audience, but to keep it interesting for me. But then there's, like, I don't know where I was going, but yeah,
That's
final answer. I don't know whatever I just said.
one of I never noticed it before because I primarily watch your videos on the Apple TV, primarily on like a large screen. Like, I don't really watch a lot of videos on the YouTube website. So normally in the process, as when I have a guest on, I'll check out their socials, check out their YouTube, and just kind of get a feel for what they write about themselves. And your tagline on YouTube is, "I make art, so should you." And I really, really love that, because I do think that everybody has a creative outlet, whatever it is. Whatever it is, you just, if you don't know what it is, it's just because you haven't found it yet, but you will find it if you keep pushing on it. What would, I know the general consensus, especially in our community, is to just get started, right? And we say that a lot and we hear it a lot, and it's kind of become the cliche, like, how do I get started doing that? And the answer is always just get started. I think that's a bullshit answer. I really do. I think it's the right concept, but I think when something looks insurmountable, telling somebody to just jump into it is probably not the best advice. So, what advice would you give to somebody who wants to get started, doesn't quite know what art they're going to be into making, and wants to try to figure it out? What advice would you give to someone as first steps for figuring out where they fit into the world creatively?
Well, I would say find out what interests you. Like if you find yourself watching way more painting videos or way more sculpting videos or wood carving, woodworking, wood turning, resin,
Mm-hmm.
if one of those has really piqued your interest, that is maybe an indicator that it's something you would enjoy trying to make yourself because it's already got your attention. And then do a little research. Watch some videos on the techniques. That way, you're not frustrated right out the gate. At least have a basic understanding. And YouTube is such a good resource. Literally anything you want to know about or learn, you can find it on YouTube. So do a little bit of homework, get a basic kit or the components that you would need, some basic tools or materials, whatever. But don't go overboard. Get something. I don't know. That's kind of a double-edged sword because if you get crap tools in the
Mm-hmm.
beginning, you may get frustrated by how
Sure.
crappy they are. So it's like a balance in your budget if you can afford something, but you don't want to get into it and realize you hate it, and then you're stuck with all these tools too. So it's kind of a
Right.
balancing act. But after all that, then is when I think a lot of people just sit and they keep thinking, well, I still need to accumulate tools. I still need to accumulate something or knowledge or whatever. That is when I think that just get started applies
Mm-hmm.
because I still rely on that saying, the mentality of just start because I can plan and problem solve in my head forever and toss ideas around and concepts and everything. Eventually, you have to. This is what I'm making. I may not know all the steps yet, or even if it's going to be good or whatever. But there is a place for that say
Sure. Sure.
definitely because that is the next step is once you get a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of stuff in order to do
Then
it.
it's just get started, because
Then
now
it's get
you have
started.
now you have a path.
Yeah. Also, maybe even look around and see if you can get creative in with what you have. That's part of what's awesome with art is you don't need expensive materials and or expensive tools. You can literally take a rock and rub it against the concrete until you've created a shape or a piece of pottery, like a broken. That's actually even before wood carving. Just memory is I used to take broken terracotta pot shards,
Hmm.
and you know how a curb is kind of a
Sure.
rough right angle. I would
Uh-huh.
find the ones with the sharpest edge, and I would grind it against the corner of the curb and create star patterns
Oh,
or
wow.
and I used to actually we had a underneath our house was a pier and beam house and I had a like a little
So, like,
stash of
footings.
terracotta
Yeah.
pots and I would take these pots and so it wasn't always broken shards I would cut like almost like cut glass but
Mhm.
with terracotta pots and just literally just scraping against a concrete corner of a step or a curb
Wow.
and so and made stuff cool enough to where at my church I gave them to people as friends or as gifts and people started really wanting these cut things so like that's another thing too is you creativity is not just in the piece concept it's in how you get there too
Right.
like
Your
that's why gravity
processes.
is such a huge thing like everything and anything everything in your house was all an original idea at some point which is all because of creativity um, and I know that creativity I don't know is it's probably a skill that you could learn I'm sure it is.
It's
It's
a
like
muscle.
anything. The more you practice it.
Yeah, it's a
Um,
muscle. It's like it
yeah,
acts like a muscle because the more
yeah,
you engage your
neural pathways.
creativity, the wider it gets, the
Right, like,
stronger.
yeah, the area of my brain dedicated to
Mhm.
creativity, I've used it enough to where it might come a little easier, but everyone I think can get there, and yeah, anything, like, that's the thing is, like, even software writers who, they're creatives in their own way. There's creatives in every aspect of life and every profession, everything. There's always some kind of creativity involved. So everyone does have it. If they like, I'm not creative at all. Well, are you
You
good
just
at
haven't
anything? Well,
found
it
your
takes creativity to be good in that
mm,
thing, whatever it is.
yep, you just haven't found your outlet. That's usually what it
Yeah,
means. I mean, I've never met anyone that is completely void of creativity. You haven't found where you're creative. Even my ex-wife used to always say, "I'm not a creative person. I'm not a creative person." I said, "Have you ever seen yourself in the kitchen?" And she's like, "Well, I guess that counts." I was like, "No, that counts. That's not I guess that counts. That counts. Like you're a really good cook. Like that's your area of creativity. You're a great cook."
yeah.
So,
Picking out a gift that's not necessary, like you can get creative on gift giving. There's a creativity in every aspect of life. I
mhm,
know you could say that for other things as well, but I think creativity is like one of the most important things humanity has, uh, because it's not only useful, but it can be used in just a way, just to make something look cool.
sure.
Just for that reason. Like I know a lot of basically everything I've made is not practical. It's just for the aesthetic
I,
value.
there's a
Well,
lot of there's a lot to be said about aesthetic value.
Well, thank you. And I mean, I agree. That's why I make it, because I like making things that I like that I think look cool.
Mhm.
Just for the sake of it. Kind of like music. Music, I think, is a very similar sort of utility where it can bring people together. There can be a sense of community. There can be, or just inducing emotions and things like that. That's what's interesting about art. But I will say, I think art does fit within definite, defined boundaries. It's not something, because if anything can be art, then nothing is art just as equally much. Just
Mhm.
like you can take a guitar, throw it down the stairs. Is that music? No, it's noise, and it came from an instrument. But I think you could very much say, no, that is not music. That there has to be some intention behind it. And throwing a bunch of glass on the ground into a broken pile of glass, in my opinion, if it has to be in a museum where you have to be told that it's art to know it's art, then it's probably not art. Um, I know I'm very opinionated when it comes to like, oh, you can't gatekeep art, you can't hold it in. Well, then
You
it
can have
has
an opinion
then
on it.
the word art has no meanings if it does
Right.
not fit inside of a category. Like, sorry, I get all irritated. Like the modern art movement, I think most of it's just some kind of a
There's a lot of really bad
tax
modern art.
tax loophole strategies or money laundering when it comes to, like, because when you see a white canvas that's been painted with white paint, so it just looks like a white canvas. I'm sorry, like that's just a white canvas. You just need to put the art on it, you know, or a pile of trash or something. Oh, it's so cerebral and deep. No, it's just a pile of trash. You
My
know, um,
sophomore year of college, my girlfriend's best friend was manager at a gallery in Manhattan. So you know what we're the kind of galleries we're talking about. Like people go in, they're all white walls and wood floors, and people are drinking very expensive champagne. And she was like, "Hey, the artists at this show are the artists at this gallery opening are not terribly well known. We need some people to show up. Can you guys?" And she like 10 of our friends, like we all got together and we got dressed up and we went to this gallery opening. And I was walking around this gallery opening, and I, as someone who appreciates art, but I'm not an amazing artist, right? I'm not going to put myself out there like that, but I appreciate art a lot. Like I have a great appreciation, even if it's very simple art. Like I really enjoy it. And we walked into one of the rooms, and I'm never gonna, as long as I live, I will never forget this. There were these plexiglass squares on the wall. You know those standoffs that you use, the metal ones that keep like when you make an award that's a wood plaque and then the acrylic is separated with the standoffs.
yeah,
Okay, so those four standoffs, they were all that's what held it into the wall. And on the obverse side of the acrylic, they had basically taken axle grease and smeared it with their fingers in lines. That was it. And it was a 5-piece work. It was $65,000.
Yeah.
And it had a sold tag under the name. And I was just like, I'm never going to understand modern art. And that was it for me. It was like, I've seen very good modern art, some, Saul,
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's
Saul Lewitt
legitimate
is an
modern art.
amazing artist, right? But he's not putting axle grease on the back of a piece of acrylic and calling it art. He's doing incredible artwork. I can think of a bunch of modern artists that I've come to learn later in my life are really talented people, but I had a sour taste in my mouth after college seeing the art at this gallery opening that was selling like crazy. Like, I don't know if people are buying it because they're expected to buy it or if they're buying it because it's like, oh, well, we're at a gallery. Let's show off and show what we can buy. I don't know.
Yeah, and there might be a sense of like I can see the deeper meaning in this piece more than everyone else, like some sort of like intellectual thing or pretentiousness.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely some pretentiousness going on in the art world. Also, I think just like it almost feels like a weird scam because I'm just like, no way someone's spending that much money on something that required such little effort.
This was one of those galleries where if you stood a mop up in the corner, 5 people would walk around it and one would try to buy it. Like, it was
people
like
have done stuff like that where someone literally left like an actual piece of trash. Where's a pineapple? I think they left a pineapple or something. People were taking pictures of it. He even put like a little fake plaque. There's been all kinds of experience done like that, just to show like, it's getting into the realm of being insulting to artists,
to actual artists. Yeah.
Yes. And yes. I don't think that it's wrong to say that some things that are being passed off as art, I would not consider art.
That's not gatekeeping.
And
that's being protective of something you love. Honestly,
right. That's the thing that's why I'm so passionate about it because I mean, there are great art. There's great art in every genre, but there are some things that are being passed off as art, like covertly somehow, and I don't, it'd be like
everybody's trying to be subversive. It's like I want to be a subversive artist, and it's like you're not being subversive. You're just being crappy.
Yeah, I don't know, and I know that some people get all. Well, no, art is purely subjective, and it's like, but then it loses meaning if something has zero anything to sort of keep it in a category, then anything could be in that category, and then it loses value.
And people like to make that same argument with pornography, where the famous statement from the Supreme Court where the guy said, "I know it when I see it." Well, yeah, but there are still kind of like even if the lines at the edges are fuzzy, there are still lines. It's the same with art. Like if I look at a piece of acrylic with axle grease on it, I can pretty confidently say that's not really art. Now, if he had done a pattern on the 5 pieces, like, okay, at least I can make the argument that that's art.
Right. Art does not need to be context dependent. So the fact that it was in a gallery, therefore
that's the only reason I knew it was
supposed
art.
To be art. But if that was off of its standoffs and leaning up against the wall in a warehouse, you'd say, "Wow, that's a dirty piece of plexiglass."
That's cool. We could clean that up and use that for something else.
Yeah, like if a song has to be in a specific environment before you know that it's supposed to be a song, then it probably isn't a song. Before if it's not like art shouldn't be context dependent.
I love that. I absolutely love that because that's a really good way to put it. Art should not be context dependent. You shouldn't have to see it in a gallery or a museum to know that it's art. I love that. Like, put that out on the street. Would you take it? Would the garbage truck take it, or would somebody take it and put it in their home?
Right. I even heard, I don't know how true it is, but I heard a story of like, it was an actual like pile of garbage in the corner and it was supposed to be like some statement against society or waste or whatever. And the janitor of the museum threw it away because he thought that it was just some trash someone had left.
I have a very similar story to this. It's very funny because you said context dependent. So one of my favorite museums in New York, there's a museum called the Metropolitan Museum of Art has a museum. No, it's not the Metropolitan Museum of Art. It's the Museum of Modern Art, which of course means why the hell are you going there? But it's one of my favorite museums.
MoMA.
and they have up in Beacon, New York, which is, I don't know, about half hour south of Jimmy. They have a satellite site, and there's a couple of them around New York. And when you go in there, there's this one art exhibit, and I've tried to explain it to people. I've been there with people. I've showed it to them, and I think they're having the same reaction because it's very contextual. It's a pile of broken glass, but it's in a very specific shape on the floor, and you could tell it was formed into this shape. So you're like,
Right.
okay, there's something going on here.
Yeah.
You go over to the wall. It's actually, the idea is it's based on a map of Atlantis. Okay. And that's the glass dome landing as it shattered on the land that was Atlantis. So it's all in the shape of what Atlantis would be. You would have no idea. It's one of the coolest pieces of art there, but you would have no idea what the hell that was unless you looked at the card on the wall. So I love it. I love showing it to people because I think it's interesting, but yeah, it's very context dependent.
Yeah, well, and then there's also the kinds of art where it is an actual pile of trash, but it's been arranged in a specific way that it casts a beautiful shadow on the wall behind it when a light is projected to one side. So that would be context dependent, but still, the art itself is also the shadow, and anyone would be able to tell that that's art.
Sure.
Now, if there's a bunch of glass been artfully arranged on the ground in a pattern, that is art because you can
see the pattern. I mean, you just don't know what it is, but you kind of see it. And then
exactly. If it has it, and art, I feel, does have to have intention. Now, can art happen without intention? Like, say you accidentally spill a paint can on a canvas and it creates a really cool look pattern or whatever. Is that art? It may not have had intention, but it may have been accidental art. That's where I haven't completely decided for myself where it lies, because like, then you could take people like Jackson Pollock. He did have intention, but ultimately when he did that and the paint left his brush, he had no say of where exactly it was going to go, the droplet size, if there was going to be a string of paint, if it was going to be actual spots of paint. He didn't sit there and intentionally do that. He just kind of let physics take over after he flung the brush. I have my own sort of hybrid ideas behind that. I would call it art.
Right.
But in my opinion, it's not. The only thing of real value of it is the originality behind it, because he's the first person to do that.
Sure.
I think there is value in a novel idea and thinking. Is it, I don't know, groundbreaking, or something crazy beautiful to look at? I don't know. Like, they're kind of interesting, whatever. Like, a Jackson Pollock, a bunch of just, I don't know. I don't know. That's where my own opinions. I think there are some. I know that my stance on art is my opinion, but I think it's almost more than an opinion in a way. That the specific opinion on, does art need to have some kind of boundaries, even if they're fuzzy? I think that's kind of like just a truth. But
I think so.
But when it comes to stuff like Jackson Pollock and my opinions about that kind of stuff, that's more just my opinion.
It's like they always say. You can break the rules, but you have to learn the rules first. A lot of people that go to art school, it's like, every artist wants to be a rule breaker, but they don't even know what the rules are. They just know they want to break the rules. Like, okay, but what rule are you breaking? I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that is true too. Cause, like, yeah, I've created my own set of rules for art. And as long as it looks beautiful or interesting, or if it has some sort of aesthetic appeal and it was made with intention, then, for me, it's art.
How
personally
much
in my art.
How much do you, and I don't know how to ask this without sounding like a jackass, but you understand where I'm coming from when I ask it. How much validation do you get from your audience versus how much do you just like, I'm just doing this because, this is what I love to do? Like, do you find it validating when you put something out there and people go, oh, I love this? or is it more of a like, well, that's cool, but that was what I was making, regardless of if anyone loved it or like.
Well, I
And I'm
mean,
not
no,
trying to paint
because
you as a jerk or anything, but it's just like I wonder because, when especially with art, like how much of it is like, oh, I love the warm and fuzzies after I put something out. So,
um, uh, the impact of comments and everyone heaping praise on me had more of a punch at the beginning.
mm-hmm.
It's become kind of like, every video I can expect a certain type of comment,
Right.
which is, it never is not awesome,
Mm-hmm.
but it's less of an impact, if that makes sense. And I know that may
Sure.
sound kind of harsh but that's
No,
just
it
the
makes
reality with
perfect
anything.
sense.
With, you will get desensitized to
Mm-hmm.
whatever. So the praise, so I know it's an indication that I am making people happy, and obviously, their comments will state that.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, it's validating to hear people literally, in their words, validate what you're doing.
Right.
But over time, it's I don't focus on it as much.
Mm-hmm.
I still read comments, not as much as I used to, uh, but I wouldn't say it's like a drive at all for why I do it. I don't do it for the validation.
Perfect.
I do it because it's an impulse.
Mm-hmm.
And the video is the thing that I pay the bills with. I don't even sell the pieces I make, just mainly because I want to have some kind of an exhibition where people can come see it for themselves eventually. But
I love that idea.
yeah, because like, I don't know, if I sold everything I had, then it would just be gone, and sitting on someone's shelf. And eventually, it probably will be because I don't have to keep everything for sentimental reasons. It's more because my audience means a lot to me, and I feel like they deserve at least the opportunity to see stuff themselves if they want to.
I
Um,
love it.
anyway, so I don't even know if I answered your question. It was
Yeah,
about being
I think you did
validated by comments
I
primarily,
think you
but
did a
no,
perfect job.
okay, cool. So yeah, the short answer is I still love
Sure.
the awesome comments, but I don't. It's not the driving force.
Cool.
Why I make the videos. You know.
I can't
But yeah,
believe it, but we've been going an hour and 20 minutes, which is I am so
yeah, it's
surprised by
crazy. I
that because
saw the
this has
time,
gone
and
so
I was like,
fast.
man, I gotta pee. That's probably why.
Well, let's get over to things of the week before you end up sitting in a river of your own filth over there. um, I I'm very curious to see what you brought to the table as as a thing of the week because I've always wanted a trip inside the mind of Bobby Duke. So, what do you have as
Well,
your thing of the week?
okay, my thing of the week is more just a weird science fact
Okay.
about astronomy specifically. It's just a weird thing that I haven't really thought of, or a lot of people probably haven't thought of. But so we can't hear the sun because there's nothing for the sound. It's the sound it would be producing to propagate through. There's no air, or
Hmm.
no molecules, or not. They're so attenuated in space in the vacuum that there's no way for that sound to get to us. But if there were some medium that the sound waves could travel through, it would be so loud that life on Earth would not have evolved ears because the sound of the sun would have been so loud that communication verbally or with sound would have been pointless because it would have been you wouldn't be able to hear anything other than the incredible roar of the sun. And I just thought that was a weird
That's an
thought.
incredible fact.
It's
I
just a weird
love it.
thought. Thank goodness there's nothing but vacuum out there, or mostly vacuum, that
Wow.
for the sound can't reach it to Earth because we'd all have no ears. I mean, not that sign language is bad, but we'd all be essentially earless and have to communicate via some other way than talking.
Wow.
Okay, is that okay?
And boy, my thing of the week suddenly doesn't feel as interesting anymore.
Oh, well, I was hoping that was going to be okay because it wasn't like a physical
It's
thing. It was just more of
freaking fantastic. No, I
some
love it.
info I've learned.
We've had over the years of doing this podcast, we've had everything from transcendental meditation to Utz cheese balls as thing of the week. So I've come to expect the unexpected, but
Cool.
that's an incredible fact. And now I'm gonna be chewing on that for days.
Yeah. So
My thing of the week, like I said, not anywhere near as interesting, but it's really a really cool thing. Um, if you're an Adobe user and you have the Creative Suite, they have something in the Photoshop beta now called Generative Fill, which basically uses AI to fill in selections with what it would predict would be there based on what you prompt it to do. And let me just tell you something. If you have a lot of photos of people that you don't want to have in the photo, it is amazing at getting rid of people from photos.
huh.
Like, I have done it twice for Kathy, my fiance. I've done it twice for her cousin, where there was a picture of someone
There
she
you
was
say you
dating.
keep taking your fiance out of the photos.
No, 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 no. That would be death. Her cousin was dating someone, and there's a lot of pictures of her and him. And every once in a while, I'll get one and it'll be like, "Can you take him out of that one?" Yeah, sure. Hold on. And it goes, and it works really, really well. And recently, they added something called, I forgot what they called it, but it's basically outcropping. So if you crop a photo beyond its borders, it will fill in, instead of just having a white border where the crop is bigger than the photo, it will actually continue the photo outside the crop. So you can
Yeah.
reframe a photo where you don't actually have enough framing to do what you want to do with the new framing and the new aspect ratio. It's wild how well it works, and it's
Interesting.
only in the beta version. And I'm thinking, like, wow, can you imagine when this reaches full release in, like, usually Adobe Max is like the first week or second week of October. So that's when it'll probably be a full release product. But I've just been having so much fun with it and doing, like, taking photos, reframing them, adjusting them, doing cool things with them. And it's fun to play with. I mean, do I have a practical use for it? Not yet, but I can see where at some point, if I had a practical use, they'd be tools I'd be really glad to have. So definitely, if you have the Creative Cloud, definitely check out the Adobe Photoshop beta, because it's pretty impressive how well this whole generative fill and generative AI cropping thing that they did, how good
Yeah,
it really works.
that's interesting. I actually don't use Adobe. I have, I think, Adobe or something Adobe because I tried learning it briefly and then gave up. It's very similar to what I use, which is Sony Vegas Pro.
Oh yeah,
I've heard it called like a sister software. It's very similar.
it's very
I
close.
just found a lot more intuitive things with Vegas. It's also what I learned, so I'm also
And
biased.
so it's funny because that's the same thing with me in Premiere. I learned how to edit video many years ago on an old version of Premiere, and I learned how to edit audio. I didn't want to. I learned audio editing on Cool Edit, which later became Adobe Audition. So the two pieces of multimedia software that I learned first are now Adobe software. So it's like, okay, I'm kind of in that world. That's just where I'm going to be, and I'm comfortable. But yeah, totally. If that's where you learned, that's where you need to stay,
Yeah,
because that's where you'll be the most proficient and the most efficient. Also,
I have a question. I actually don't know what it's called. What is it called when it's no longer in beta? Like, what is the next the
oh,
final product?
it's just a general release usually.
General release.
Yeah.
See, I want to start a petition because you know how you have like a master of a record. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it's like the finished or the finished thing of the record. We should just call it once it gets to the final iteration. Just call it master beta. Why not? Petition to change the final rendition into master beta because then
Oh,
everyone would laugh when they say it.
oh boy. Oh boy.
Hopefully that
That
wasn't you.
I love it. Now I want to take a second and thank the people that pay for that kind of content. And those people include Best Man Al Schultz from New York Woodworks, Scott Orm of Dad It Yourself DIY, Ed Swanson from Ed's Clocks and More, Nick Birchtold of Birchtold Design Build, Tori Decker of Tori Did It, Jake Drews of Make with Jake, Megan Chris from Onyx Designs Woodwork, Christian Neary from Warren Works, Ken Madden from Mad K Studios, David Wood of DW Wood Builds, Dean Duplantis, Chris Raley of Route 9 Signs, Jeff Stein, aka A Weird Guy, Kim and Garrett from Kim and Garrett Make It, Rory Langefeld of RLO Woodworks and DIY, Robert J. Keller, Brian Arsenault, the Seven Hills Maker, Dave Bauer of Dave Bauer Art, Donald LeBlanc of Fun with Woodworking, Ross Cave, Jeremy Spees, Grant Alexander from the Clamp Podcast, Brad Harrison of Brad Customs, and Billy Polton of Polton Projects. Thank you so much for supporting the show financially. It means the world to me. If you can't support the show financially, I completely understand. Feel free to share the show, leave a review, go watch the YouTube playlist for a while, get those watch hours up. That always helps. Every little bit that you do to help spread the word about the podcast helps. And that when I tell someone of the magnitude of Bobby Duke that I have a podcast, he actually believes me, and that's very important. Believability is everything in this business. So thank you so much for everything you do to bring the show to other people and to help me keep doing it week after week. Bobby, it has been an absolute pleasure, man. I've been looking forward to this like crazy since we finally set a date for the recording. And
Me too.
It's been everything. It's been everything I dreamed it would be. Talking to you is like talking to you was like the holy grail, because I've been doing this podcast since 2019. And you were one of those guests where I was always like, one day I'm going to talk to him. One day I'm going to talk to him. One day I'm going to talk to him. And then I saw you at Maker Camp, and the rest is history. But thank you so much for coming on, giving me so much of your time. I really appreciate it. I know how busy you are, and it means the world to me that you'd come on my humble little show and chat with me for a while.
Of course. I appreciate being asked, and it's been really great talking to you, seriously.
If somebody is living under a rock in the middle of the Sahara Desert and they haven't watched your YouTube channel or don't know where to find you, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me at the youtubes.com, and my channel is just called Bobby Duke Arts, and then Bobby Duke Arts on, I think, pretty much any other platform as well.
Awesome. If you're not following Bobby, I was telling Bobby before we got started, Kathy and I, everybody, you all know that Kathy and I were in Baltimore last week, and we were sitting at the table, and one of her friends, hi, Bethy, if you're listening, one of her friends was sitting there, and she's like, Bobby Duke? Like, you're going to actually talk to Bobby Duke? I know Bobby Duke. I've been watching him forever. That's awesome. So there you go. You're outside the maker community into the streaming radio DJ community. So just so you know.
Oh, sweet. Nice.
That's going to do it for this week. Next week, we have John from Gen X Grown Up, who I'm recording with in 2 days. And then after that, as I said a couple of days ago, we have Ray Sussman, who's going to talk about 3D printing, AI art, all that kind of stuff. So good shows coming up, lots of guests coming after that. So stay tuned. I hope to see you next week. Until then, have a great week, everybody.